Desculpa a interrupção do meio tempo, mas só passei rapidinho pra te lembrar que Conmebol Copa América 2024 e a UEFA Euro 2024 já estão disponíveis no EA Sports FC Mobile. Não perca tempo, vem participar desses eventos e vivenciar o melhor do futebol. Viva a emoção do verdadeiro futebol e escreva um novo capítulo nas histórias dos seus jogadores favoritos e todos os times participantes. EA Sports FC Mobile, o jogo de todo mundo no seu bolso. Participe e jogue agora. Inclui compras opcionais dentro do jogo, inclui itens aleatórios.
Welcome to the Sportsman's Voice Roundup, your weekly look at conservation and sporting community news happening across the nation and on the Hill. Thanks for tuning in. This is the TSV Roundup. All right, folks, it is that time of the week where we bring you the headlines from around the nation. This is the Sportsman's Voice Roundup for the week of July 1st. We're already in July, the year is half over, but we are not slowing down. With that, our lead story, House Natural Resources holds lively hearing on 4 CSF priority bills. We welcome back Chris Horton. We'll get to him in just a minute to break that down. New Jersey has got a piece of legislation looking to increase the minimum age for trapping. We got an article coming in about mountain lions in Montana and Washington State. An update to the Arkansas General Assembly budget issue. Wild boar, and finally, our CEO and President Jeff Crane honored. We'll get into all of that and more on this Independence Day week edition of the Roundup. But let's welcome in Chris Horton, our Director of Fisheries Policy here at CSF. Y'all are getting to know him more and more. Chris, welcome in. Let's break down these 4 bills on the Hill.
Yeah, thanks, Fred. And yeah, good to talk to you again. Seems like it was just a couple of days ago that we talked.
Indeed.
But, so last week, the House Natural Resources Committee held a hearing on 4 bills, and kind of how that process works is that the bills, when they're assigned to committees, the first step is to have a hearing and to have witnesses there to speak to each of those bills, and as well as give the members of Congress some opportunities to ask some questions. So the 4 bills that we've supported or played a small to a large role in helping draft the legislation were before the committee last week. And the first one, there were a couple of them that were pretty non-controversial, and two that had some lively discussion around them. But the 2 that were pretty non-controversial was the Congressman Levin's bill, which basically was the deals with coastal and estuary resilience. And basically this bill basically supports 2 programs authorized under the Coastal Zone Management Act to enhance coastal resources. And, one of the things we wanted to make sure of when they were drafting or looking to reauthorize these programs was to ensure that for like the National Estuary Reserve Research Program, we established these estuary reserves for studying the effects of like climate change and other things, but those play a role in preventing any development of those areas. Traditionally, those have always been still open to recreational use and recreational fishing, and we just wanted to make sure that was in fact the case, and worked with the bill authors and some language to do that. The next one is basically our MAP Oceans Act. As the last Congress, we passed the Maplands Act, which basically required federal agencies that they have jurisdiction over public lands to basically digitize their mapping data in a standard format, so companies like Onyx could use it and the public could see it, but also to help us kind of understand where are all the landlocked parcels of land out there that are public, federally owned, but maybe landlocked, so that through our Making Public Lands Public program that also passed Congress many years ago to dedicate some funds to securing either purchase from willing landowners that want to sell their property to provide access to that, or to purchase access easements from those landowners. So they still own the land, but they sell off the rights to access those public areas. So that program was very helpful, but we recognized that we needed to do this on the water side too. So there's already a MAP Waters Act out there, which our own Taylor Schmitz testified in the House last year in support of that bill. That was for the Department of Interior and the Department of Agriculture. So U.S. Forest Service, national wildlife refuges, all the public lands under those two secretaries, basically this bill would make sure that they're all digitized in a format that's accessible by the public and usable by marine electronic companies, and for use your smartphone apps we have. So we had to do a second one though. We have Map Waters. That's primarily the freshwater stuff. But honestly, the federal agency with the most jurisdiction over the most water is Department of Commerce through NOAA.
Wow.
And that's managing our federal waters off our coast. And as you can imagine, we've got lots and lots of federal waters out there. And we also have lots and lots of different regulatory requirements for those waters. So you have some that are marine protected areas. In those marine protected areas, that's a general term for a whole suite of different types of levels of protection, with marine reserves being the most strict, where you can't fish at all in those. Fortunately, very, very small percentage of MPAs or no fishing MPAs. But regardless, it gets confusing for anglers out there and boaters. Where can I go fish? So like in the Florida Keys, for instance, there are some islands that are rookeries you can't get close to at certain times of the year. There's some areas that are just pole and troll only, so you can't have your combustible engine running in those areas. So that can get pretty confusing. So we need it all conveniently available in a digital format so that it's easily shareable with marine electronic companies. So when you go in there and you turn on your chart plotter, your depth finder, you know where you are, and what if there are any restrictions in those areas. It'll be able to let you know that. So it's an important bill. And Map Oceans was heard last week, and again, it received pretty favorable comments from both sides.
Well, that's good, and thanks for drawing the distinction between the two, because obviously when I read your article and bringing you on here, I was like, hey, we covered this on the program, I think, and so even for me, it was good to clear that up and draw that. So can we call this a sister bill to that? Is this a complementary bill, more or less?
Yeah, it's basically the same bill, but applied to a different agency. And the reason we have to do two, couldn't do it all in one bill, is because the different agencies fall under different committees of jurisdiction in the U.S. Congress. So they had to be separated. There's actually a third agency out there that also has management authority over a ton of waters, and that's the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers.
Right.
But fortunately, I think we're going to be able to address that through the Water Resources Development Act, which is a bill that's reauthorized every 2 years, that basically dictates the Corps of Engineers priorities and projects for the next 2 years. So we've got a provision in this word that I think is going to be able to address that without having to do a full-blown standalone bill.
So if I may, because obviously here in the last week, there's been a lot of breaking news as it concerns the Supreme Court. And if I'm catching you off guard, I didn't launch this to you before you came on here.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to ask you about Chevron and the Supreme Court's opinion on that as far as fisheries. Does that help us in our space? Does that clear up some stuff or allow management to be done in a better way? Because it seems like with some of these bureaucracies, we just keep running up against walls. And does this help?
That's a great question, Fred, that we're all asking. I mean, that's the question of the day, the month, the year.
Yeah.
Is what ramifications this is going to have whenever the courts don't just defer to the agency's interpretation of what the intent of Congress is. And from a fisheries perspective, I mean, what brought this about was some bills relative to commercial fishing. So obviously, it does have significant ramifications for the interpretation of the Magnuson-Stevens Act. And actually, from our perspective, we passed the Modern Fish Act back in, I think it was 2018. To try to amend the bill to be more reg-friendly, to get at some more alternative management approaches. And we touched on this with Martha the other day when we were talking about the Shark Act, and you and I have spoke to this before about this whole federal system of management and how we try to manage our federal fisheries based on an annual catch limit. And the way Congress defines annual catch limits in the Magnuson-Stevens Act, there's some language in there that makes it a little more broad than the way NOAA has been interpreted. So NOAA basically, when they passed the Magnuson-Stevens Act, NOAA took that and distilled it down. There's 10 national standards, and they took those national standards, which were written pretty broadly, and then they narrowly defined them. And National Standard 1 has to do with catch, defining catch, annual catch limits, accountability measures, stuff like that. But they basically define catches in pounds or numbers of fish. Whereas we think that catch could also be constrained to a percentage of the population that's being removed. So it's a harvest mortality rate, essentially. And that's kind of pretty much the way all inland fisheries are managed. Now, we don't have this commercial component that's out there, fishing for a different reason than recreational anglers are. So you don't have the harvest pressures necessarily on the fishery and freshwater side as you do on the marine side of things. But we think that catch can be defined more broadly. And maybe this Chevron ruling could provide us some opportunities to make that argument, or at least force the agency to go back and reevaluate National Standard 1 and how we define catch. And that'll be our opportunity to work with the agency to potentially get a new way to manage our fisheries. And again, you and I have talked about this. This is something we need to cover in a much longer episode one of these days, because it really is kind of an interesting situation that we find ourselves in on the marine side versus the freshwater side and how we manage our fisheries.
Well, thanks for going down that quick detour there on that. But I thought it was apropos to bring it up, and especially given here we got two more bills to quickly cover here before I let you go. But it was worthwhile, and it's going to be extremely interesting to see how this all shakes out and what comes out here in the next 12 or so months.
Yeah, the short answer is no one knows really what this is going to mean. It's just going to mean that we do know that it will mean that there will be a lot of challenges to the way the federal agencies do work now, but it also is kind of a wake-up call for Congress to, when you write bills, you're going to have to be pretty much more specific than we have been recently. And
exactly right.
What that intent of that bill is to do. It can't be written too broadly anymore. So,
fantastic.
But all right,
wrap her up.
Yeah, quickly going to the other two bills, the Fisheries Data Modernization and Accuracy Act of 2024. This is Congressman Griggs' bill. Basically, what it's trying to do is get at that better recreational harvest collection data. Right now, we're dependent on the Marine Recreational Information Program, which is a federal program. It's a great survey of catch over large areas, over multiple species, and over a long period of time. And it's just meant to give us trends data or kind of snapshots in trends and how populations are trending. It was never intended to manage to a one-day red snapper season in the South Atlantic. So we've got to come up with a better way to do that. And that's what this bill tries to do. It sets up a grant program for states to develop their own or improve existing state data collection programs that can supplement or replace INRIP. It also requires these unprecedented absolute abundance estimate studies like the Great Red Snapper Count in the South Atlantic, which gave us a really good snapshot of the fish that were actually in the water, and demonstrated that by actually counting the fish in the water, it showed that we had 3 times as many red snapper in the Gulf of Mexico as what NOAA's stock assessment says. Yet we have not incorporated the Great Red Snapper Count in any meaningful way in the stock assessment. So we're trying to get at some of those so that when we get good information, let's actually use it. So that's what that bill tries to get to. So, and then the fourth one, again, we're going back to North Atlantic right whales. Congressman Buddy Carter and Congresswoman Mary Peltola introduced a bill that would delay the implementation of any changes to the vessel speed rule for North Atlantic right whales until, I think it's January of 2031. But in the meantime, it sets up a program under the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation to be able to study, or not necessarily, study for one, research, but also to test and the implementation of technological solutions so that we don't have to have a draconian speed zone, but we can actually know where the whales are at any given time and avoid those areas, or have dynamic speed zones around known whale locations rather than just implementing thousands of miles of a 10 foot or 10 mile per hour speed zone. So everybody's supportive of whales. We want to make sure that we're doing all we can not to negatively impact whales and allow that population to rebuild. We just think technology is the most effective way to get there. And this bill would set up a program under the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation to help us get there more quickly.
I'd imagine 6.5 years probably get you there, and probably sooner. Allow for that technology to, be tested, run ground truth, and maybe even get it implemented before 31. That would be pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole goal. And right now, NIFWIF already has kind of a temporary program that is being funded through I believe it's some IRA funding to start looking at technology. And Congress just wants to make this a permanent thing. Let's not just make it about right whales. Let's make it about all whales. How can we avoid negatively impacting large cetaceans or large whale populations coast to coast? And so that's what this program will do. It will get us there.
Makes a heck of a lot of sense. Well, awesome. Well, good. Thanks. Appreciate it. I know you're busy. And as you guys heard, Chris mentioned, we recorded our feature program that'll hit you guys tomorrow on the 4th. So more from Chris. Martha Gaius from ASA joins us. And then in 2 weeks, you're going to hear from Chris again and Congressman Graves. So we'll update you on that. But all things Chris Horton here for the next month.
All right. Well, it is summertime. It is everybody's thinking about fishing. So
yes, indeed. It's very, very appropriate for the time on the calendar. Sir, thanks again for your time as always. Have a great 4th. And the audience will hear from you again tomorrow.
All right. Thanks so much, Fred. Appreciate it.
All right. Thanks. Thanks again to Chris for coming on, breaking that down. Those 4 bills, some good stuff there. And let's continue on. New Jersey, they're looking to up the age for someone to get a trapping license. It comes from Kaylee Leaguer. In short, like I just said, the enactment of Assembly Bill 2920 would increase the minimum age for someone to be eligible to trap by 6 years. So they're wanting to up it from 12 to 18. I don't know why. This seems kind of arbitrary, unless this is specifically an obstructionist tact. There really is no reason for this. Again, it's arbitrary. It doesn't even make any sense. I'm just kind of lost. So, I mean, there's a great deal of education that needs to be done here for the legislators there in New Jersey, because if they just pass it to pass it, it's gonna, there's some implications here. There's an R3 issue here, getting young folks out on the landscape, doing these things, participating in these traditions, but more with trapping, it's a trade. I would argue. It's equipment intense. It is labor intense. There's a lot that goes into it, and getting young folks on the landscape to do this and have it become something they're proficient at by the time they're an adult is pretty important. I mean, it's a tough thing, like myself, to get into it well into your adulthood, lacking mentors and having to learn by a lot of text. And then, for me, it was a lot of text. And then with so many great things over the last 15 or so years with YouTube and just a lot of social content and people willing to share, that is out there. But really having a mentor to go out there and run the landscape, run lines, is hugely important. And the why it's important is because trappers on the landscape provide a great service to all the states where you can legally trap or use efficient equipment that is more scrutinized than anything else out there as far as tools and technology to take wildlife, right? Best management practices are constantly reevaluated. But getting back to my point of the why, you have states like Massachusetts where they all but outlawed trapping, and now they have to outsource. The state has to pay a professional trapper to come in and do beaver mitigation work or some other problem critter. And this costs hundreds of thousands of dollars when they could have just had trappers go out there and offer to pay to buy a license. Here in New Hampshire, I pay $35. I raise my hand and say, I want to go out there and trap. And I give the state my dollars. And then I go out on my own time. I spend my own gas, my own time. And I go out and I run a line or two, or I'll help a landowner with beaver mitigation, something beavers blocking up culverts and creating flooding issues on an ag area. Like, again, other than an obstructionist tact, I don't see a purpose here. We don't see a purpose here, and we've opposed this bill. And I know Kaylee has submitted testimony to that very idea. So we'll keep you updated. Our friends at Fur Takers of America collaborated on us a bit with this, and we had conversations. They too had the same head-scratching question. Naturally, our friends at FTA and NTA, National Trappers are also involved here on their end. So certainly keep in touch with us or stay in touch with us for updates, but you can also go check out Fur Takers of America National Trappers Association for updates there, and then all other trapping legislation. A tale of two mountain lions coming from Marie Newmiller. CSF and our partners have been engaging closely in conversations concerning mountain lion harvest. This includes Marie as past participation on cougar focus groups in Washington State. Montana Fish and Wildlife Commission focused on creating a mountain lion harvest that was sustainable for both mountain lions and ungulates while maintaining opportunities for sportsmen and women. The Washington State Fish and Wildlife Commission accepted a citizen-led petition focused on reducing the legal, regulated harvest instead of directly addressing their concerns around the state-led public safety removals. So this going back to a couple of weeks ago, anyway, mid-June, Montana and Washington commissions received presentations on mountain lion harvest quotas. There were several similarities between both states. Each commission had increased harvest opportunities in recent years in both states, have ungulate populations that are at risk or below objective, with mountain lions being cited as the potential limiting factor. Despite those similarities, the tenor and potential outcomes varied widely. Montana's harvest guidelines were put forward by professionally trained staff at the Montana Department of Fish and Wildlife and Parks as a part of their standard review process. Washington State's harvest review was brought forward by a citizen petition that Washington Department of Fish and Game, Fish and Wildlife's professionally trained staff had recommended against. While the discussions at the Montana Commission centered on harvest quotas that were sustainable for ecosystem balance, the Washington State Commission conversation focused solely on mountain lion populations and conflict removals. After adopting a citizen petition put forward by anti-predator hunting organizations, Washington Commission went outside of their historical rulemaking process and drafted the mountain lion harvest rule themselves instead of allowing the department to complete the work. The deviation from the standard procedures appears to have created a large divide within the commission and with key stakeholders, including the sportsmen and women that support Washington's efforts, their fish and wildlife efforts through the American System of Conservation Funding. The Washington Commission's proposal will count all human-caused mortality, including vehicle strikes and conflict removals, against the hunting harvest quota. The change in policy will likely lead to several Puma management units reaching quotas and closing prior to the start of the hunting season each year, effectively eliminating mountain lion hunting opportunities in those PMUs for the foreseeable future. CSF strongly advocates for management guided by the North American model of wildlife conservation while continuing to utilize sportsmen and women in their efforts to manage wildlife populations through legal, regulated hunting and trapping. I would guess and editorialize that there is no great surprise there. Alas, we continue to fight and know that Marie is on the front lines of that. An update here from Kent Keene. We reported recently that there was a return to the General Assembly in Arkansas to approve budget for the Fish and Game, and it looks like that has happened. Upon returning for a special session called by the governor, the Arkansas General Assembly approved a budget for the Arkansas Game and Fish Commission, ensuring the agency was funded into the next fiscal year. Leaders of the Arkansas Legislative Sportsmen's Caucus played a major role in addressing the challenges that prevented the budget from passing during the shortened fiscal session that took place earlier this year. This move ensures that both the agency and sportsmen and women who support and benefit from their conservation efforts will be able to continue their work moving forward. Jokingly, comments among the sporting conservation community all contain some version of, was that really so hard? However, this hiccup in the budgetary process, at least in part, demonstrates the delicate balance the state fish and wildlife agencies must strike as they advance their mission within their state. While states like Arkansas have wisely vested conservation and management authority within their state fish and wildlife agency via their constitution, agencies still have a duty to educate the public, including the General Assembly, on the reasoning behind management decisions in a way that is digestible to the general audience. This is critical for maintaining trust and support for the agents. So good update there out of Arkansas. Thank you, Kent. Mark Lance brings us this article titled Rooting Out the Problem of Wild Pigs. Something I am glad I do not have to deal with a whole lot here in New Hampshire. Though there are rumored populations. Let's hit the highlights. 2021, the Alabama Legislative Sportsmen's Caucus spearheaded a successful effort to expand feral hog hunting at night on privately owned property. In 2024, Texas and Oklahoma approved the use of warfarin-based toxicant, kaput, in their effort to control wild pig populations through poisoning. Mississippi, through their wild hog control program, offers feral hog traps to private land managers that meet certain requirements. Some states, such as Kentucky and Ohio, most recently are limiting the recreational hunting of feral hogs due to people transporting and releasing feral hogs for the sole purpose of hunting them. What a terrible idea. I've heard this for 20 years, especially over 20 years, but in states like where I live, where there are not an outbreak of feral hogs, and people with the misguided idea of, hey, let's bring these things in so we can hunt them. Nah, if you want to go hunt them, there's plenty of states with a problem, and I'm sure they'll be happy to have you. You do not want that nightmare, because once they're established, probably an act of God to get them out. However, hunters and trappers can certainly play a role in managing, and probably, land managers on their own at the very, very local level. And to that point, Mark writes, wild hogs are prolific reproducers. Adult sows, given favorable conditions, can easily have 2 litters of piglets per year, and those offspring can reach sexual maturity between 6 and 8 months of age. Good Lord. Through rooting and the consumption of seedlings and row crops, wild hogs do damage to not only farmers, but also destroy native wildlife habitat, impacting both game and non-game species. Ground nesting birds such as quails and wild turkey can be severely impacted through nest destruction, predation, and other species such as white-tailed deer experience increased competition for food sources. Limitations on irresponsible transport of this invasive species have been made in many states and should continue to be strengthened, as this played a huge part in the fast expansion of their range. See my earlier editorial. With wild pigs now present in at least 35, that is terrible, 35 states. Management strategies continue to evolve. The wholesale removal of wild pig sounders through trapping has proven time and time again to be the most effective yet costly means of eradication. In states such as Kentucky, wild pigs are slowly starting to appear in places where they haven't been in the past. In these instances, true eradication through trapping is possible if their presence is caught soon enough. However, in some states such as Texas, where the wild pig population is around 3 million, true eradication is nearly impossible. In these cases, recreational hunting should not be unnecessarily limited, as it is proven to be an effective means of managing wildlife populations and provide sportsmen and women with increased opportunity to get a field. I do know that there's some folks that eat them, so maybe an opportunity for table fare there. And then lastly, the efficacy of using toxins to manage pig population has been debated for years, but just recently Texas and Oklahoma have approved the use of kaput kaput is required to be used in feeders made specifically for wild hogs, and only state licensed professionals can utilize it. In a recent study out of Texas A&M, it's shown that kaput is effective in wild pig control and management. Not a good, not a good trend there. 35. That's a lot of states, man, to have pig problems. Like Mark said, a lot of them where they're established, it's just not going away. Wrapping this up, I was trying to keep it short, but Chris and I had a good conversation. Nevertheless, we'll get into our last article here. This is going to suffice for 2 weeks here because next week there is no TSV Roundup. There will be no TSV EPUB due to the holiday, but hit that more in housekeeping. So with this last one here, Dallas Safari Club Foundation recognized Jeff Crane as the 2024 Legacy Award winner. So as I mentioned earlier, our president and CEO was awarded the Dallas Safari Club Foundation's Legacy Award at their annual gala and auction in Dallas last Saturday night. The award was created to honor hunter conservationists who, through their passions and dedication, have left more than their personal mark on the past. The award was created to recognize their many contributions to the future and to the legacy of conservation through hunting. Jeff, through his career work in conservation leadership at CSF, has ensured that our hunting heritage is both celebrated and continues, said Dallas Safari Club Foundation CEO Corey Mason. As a conservation policy leader, Jeff clearly and frequently communicates the hunter's role in conservation of species and habitat. A lifelong outdoorsman, Jeff has led CSF since 2002. Before CSF, Jeff spent 5 years in the U.S. Congress and was instrumental in establishing the Maryland Legislative Sportsmen's Caucus. In addition, Jeff has experience developing wildlife habitat management plans in the United States and South Africa. During his 8 years in Africa, he obtained a professional hunter's license and guided hunts for big game animals. That's fantastic and well-deserved, and it's certainly a big congratulations. I think going back to our very first program here, Jeff was, you heard from Jeff? Maybe we need to bring him back in. Certainly in the upcoming months, there'll be opportunity for that, and you get an update from our leader, from our big boss. But yeah, well-deserved. Just good stuff all around it, and happy for his recognition. We'll end it with a quote from Jeff here from the article where Jeff states, "I want to express my gratitude and thanks for this award and the recognition. I'm truly humbled to accept this on behalf of Congressional Sportsmen's Foundation. Dallas Safari Club and CSF have been longtime partners, and together we are a force multiplier, both conservation and hunters across this great nation." There you have it. Congrats again, Jeff, on your award, and good on Dallas Safari Club Foundation for an excellent choice for that award. All right, that's it. I said I was going to try to keep it quick, and I'm going to do that. The housekeeping I referenced, feature episode tomorrow that'll carry us through the holiday weekend. This is we're going to start Shark Week early this year here at CSF. I know it starts on Saturday, officially the 7th. All the Nat Geos, Discovery, whoever, all those channels that are going to run that stuff. I think this is year 36. We're participating in this year. We're going to bring you a talk on the Shark Act. Tune in for more, understand what that's all about. Again, Chris Horton joins us, and Martha Gaius from the ASA, American Sport Fishing Association, join us for a pretty fun conversation, a lot of thought process going through the Shark Act, what it looks like, all that and more. So tune in tomorrow and celebrate Shark Week with CSF. You can take that into the following week where you're not at a barbecue, but maybe you want to turn on the barbecue. That'd be just fine too. Again, no TSV or TSV Roundup coming off the holiday. We will return to regularly scheduled programming and publishing the week after. I hope you all have a great holiday. Happy birthday, America. We're almost to an even 250. Big doings this year. Big reasons to celebrate. And the message from here till till November and beyond. Vote. Sportsmen and women, we do not participate enough. 20% of us on average actually show up to the ballot box. You must grab your hunting buddy, partner, whatever, by the hand this year and take both of you, and then grab a third and a fourth person. Every licensed fisherman, hunter, and trapper should be hitting the polls. We get up early enough in the morning to secure a duck blind, to secure a deer stand, do whatever we're doing. We make the time for it. You can make the time one day a year to get into your ballot box, your vote, to go stand in line. Most of them are not that tough. You guys, we have to do this. That's the stump speech. All right. We're going to head out of here. TSV today, TSV featured tomorrow. Enjoy it. Be safe out there. Have a great 4th. And we will see you guys in a couple of weeks. Thanks so much. So long. Thanks for joining us on this edition of the Sportsman's Voice podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, your support is crucial, and you can help us out right now by leaving a review, filling in those 5 stars where available, sharing this episode with friends and family, and engaging with us socially. CSF can be found on Facebook, Instagram, and X, formerly known as Twitter. Together, we can protect the outdoor sports we love and continue to keep you informed wherever you are. That's it for this week. Until next time, we'll see you later.